Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Hello everyone, and thanks once again for joining us for Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Dave Percy, and I'll be hosting today's show. Let's start off with the watch warning graphic here of the hazardous weather. We've got a wind advisory out for the eastern Alaska range here for wind gusting to 50 miles per hour. And that's out for tonight, overnight period. There's also a high wind warning continues here for St. Lawrence Island, the Bering Strait coast. Again, for winds gusting over 60 miles per hour, and that'll continue through tonight as well with the high surf advisory. And then this area, the winter weather advisory zone here with the due to the snow and blowing snow and gusty winds, that's going to be ending here by evening. By Sunday evening, it should be, I think most areas, some areas stay like the Yukon Delta out until midnight, while others end at 6 or 7 Sunday evening, and then at midnight, say for Bristol Bay. But the high wind warnings are continuing here for the central and eastern Aleutians, and looks like it'll continue until, well, at least through the night tonight for the Unalaska Dutch Harbor area back to Nikolsky, and at least this evening up until midnight. For AKwx, and still looking at winds possibly gusting as high as 100 miles per hour, at least through this evening and probably throughout much of the night, and then they'll die off. On the satellite, you can see the big storm vividly here just south of the Pribilof Islands of that classic spiral shape to the frontal boundary, but pushing well off to the east here without much northward progress. It did slip up and bring some moisture in the course of winds gusting to about 70 miles an hour at Cape Newenham. Not so much back along the southwest coast, but still quite windy. Unalaska had winds gust about 91 miles per hour, I saw in the observations, while both AKwx weren't too far behind that with about 88 miles per hour, 89 miles an hour. So quite windy with this system as promised. And then out to the west, you can see the cloud shield associated with the next system just reaching the Shimia area. And moisture with rain, actually the warmer temperatures brought rain to the Alaska Peninsula, back to the eastern Aleutians with snow falling today, moderate snow Kodiak Island, and up into, beginning to spread up into actually southern Cook Inlet, and then areas of snow tending to diminish this afternoon. As you can see, the front begins to dissipate right through here with this portion pulling out to the east, this portion pulling back to the west. And so that's just shredding this area apart. A little bit of clearing here along the Alaska Peninsula in behind. Otherwise, along the southeast coast, not too bad. You had some clouds and moisture here early on, but that's tapering off this afternoon. Another disturbance there pushing mostly toward the Queen Charlotte Islands. So back up to the northwest, a lot less in the way of clouds and a little more sun in the afternoon here. Same thing for the North Gulf Coast. Clouds, some high stuff spreading into the southern Cook Inlet area. Otherwise, really not much going on over the interior. Still on the chilly side with light winds and not much of any precipitation going on anywhere. Got some moisture advancing northward though. That's going to stay off into Canada. And on the chart today, again, that area of snow north of Skagway here, and then some snow showers east of the border on down to the south. Got a very weak trough off the coast there for some rain and snow shower conditions, with this low pulling into the northeast. So whatever snow showers or rain and snow were going on over the around the Stewart Hyder area, those will be ending shortly. But we did, in that increasing southeast flow, that did pull some clouds and snow showers on up into Prince William Sound and the south coast of the Kenai Peninsula, as well as over toward Denali Park here in the Alaska Range. So these really light amounts and pretty widely scattered. A little bit more down here, but even that wasn't much at all. And the front bringing the winds and the snow early on with the very tight gradient here. Again, winds gusting as high as 70 miles an hour at Cape Newenham. and then about anywhere from 30 to possibly 45 or 50 over the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta back into Bristol Bay. And then again, the very strong winds here, Adak and Atka, as well as Unalaska, right under that tight gradient, 945 millibar center there, just south or near St. George Island. And those very strong winds, again, at least gusting as high as about 90 miles per hour, with some areas seeing stronger gusts than that, diminishing back toward Shimei and Attu, with the warm front associated with the next system just coming onto the graphic there. And we'll see tonight, low center pushes northeastward, 975 on this one, and not much wind initially with it. Looks like all the gradient is back to the southwest or the west, but that will bring a good shot of moisture into the western Aleutians. I'll spread rain and snow in toward Adak and eventually Atka. This system slowly moving eastward now and slowly weakening, still at 952 millibars. So again, looks like probably the high wind warning will end for the central Aleutians probably by midnight. But as you can see, continue through the eastern Aleutians probably till tomorrow morning. Otherwise, drier conditions, but still breezy. Kind of an improving trend going on here over the southwest along the coast. Look for rain, rain or snow mixed, but trending toward warmer conditions. So the snow should change to rain here for Kodiak and begin to taper off, but that's going to all shift up here to the north. And eastern Cook Inlet, in other words, areas from about Anchor Point northward, Kenai, Anchorage, Palmer, Eagle River, probably won't see anything in the way of snow. It'll be coming back in from this way. So Prince William Sound, western Prince William Sound, has the best chance, and then look for possible rain and snow mixing there right along the coastline, with the rain mostly off the coast. But as you can see, this pushing in toward the Panhandle later tonight, so you'll have some snow and then rain back to the west with that, along with the southeast winds increasing there in the coastal zones. Enough gradient to hold that wind advisory in over the eastern Alaska range for tonight. Otherwise, variably cloudy to mostly clear, and still below zero in many areas of the interior, maybe a few flurries along the central Arctic coast. And then for Monday, this system really weakens and tracks east or even southeast across the Aleutian Range here to southwest, or the entrance almost to Shelikof Strait. So rain and snow continues here for the Alaska Peninsula, Bristol Bay, mostly snow up to the north there in the Kilbrook Mountain areas, southern Kuskokwim Valley, but very light amounts here, even where it falls on the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range. Rain, say, changing to rain along the coast, a mixture inland, and then any elevation at all, it's all snow, but it doesn't look like much moisture is going to get too far to the north. The interior, less wind on the Alaska Range there, but kind of breezy up here over the west and northwest interior, with no wind over the north slope and Yukon Flats, and maybe a few flurries trying to hit the Arctic coast, and stays wet over the Panhandle. Then for the outlook on Tuesday, that whole system pulls off to the east, improving conditions with it. There's a real band of showers with a weak trough here. That should mostly stay off the coast through the day. So looking dry there for the southeast coast. Looks some clearing up over the central and northern areas. Moisture southeast flow here. The next front coming across, rain, Kodiak Island, and rain along the coast. And again, not too conducive for anything much more, any snow or rain getting much past the North Gulf Coast. Could get some flurries up across the Copper River Basin of the Alaska Range, but fair over the interior. And back to the west, another intense low, 943 millibars on this one. That'll bring more storm and gale force winds with it, possibly hurricane force. And also a big increase in the winds again for the Alaska Peninsula and the eastern Aleutians, with cold air coming southward out to the west there. So snow showers all the way down to the west central Aleutians. Temperatures lows tonight, tomorrow morning, 15 to 25 below in the east, and 0 to 10 there in the west, except St. Lawrence Island mid-20s. Add 10 degrees of that for the Pribilofs. And for the highs tomorrow afternoon, still below zero central interior, down across Northway Tok, but into the mid to upper 20s south central Alaska, 40s for the Alaska Peninsula, 30s and 40s for the Panhandle. And for the lows tomorrow night, minus 20s again, but trending upward now, especially south central Alaska with more cloud cover, still down into the teens, lower 30s here toward Kodiak and Homer, lower 30s for the Panhandle, and right around zero, give or take, for the Arctic coast. And for the highs on Wednesday, or on Tuesday, I'm sorry, near 40 over Bristol Bay, and a shade below zero over the northeast.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
On to flying weather. IFR here from the Yukon Delta coast, Nunivak Island, just north of the Pribilofs on out to the west, and also area here over the southwest mountains, southern Kuskokwim Mountains into the Aucklands, and then IFR here along and just south of the Central Alaska Range, right up the east side of Shelikof Strait, east side of the Alaska Range, and also some IFR, southern Kenai Peninsula and the Barrens right up into western Prince William Sound, marginal VFR up over the eastern interior, patch IFR up over the central North Slope and Arctic coast, and looking ahead to tomorrow afternoon. This area here kind of slips back to the northwest a little bit and is really just barely along the coast now from the central areas back down to maybe Point Lay. VFR now over the northwest there, Chukchi, Selawik Valley, and eastward through a good portion of the northern interior and back up to the eastern Arctic coast, about along the Alaska Range roughly here, and east and south. That's where you're going to have the lower conditions, especially on the upslope areas there. Look for some IFR, and then a more extensive zone here down across Prince William Sound and the Coast Range, eastward across Lynn Canal Glacier Bay, and southeastward there along the border, with better conditions to the west, and IFR Bristol Bay, and up here over the northern Bering Sea to the Yukon Delta coast. Looking pretty good back out over the Aleutians, just some marginal VFR way out there towards Shimia. And for the Tuesday morning forecast, this area is still lurking right off the coast up there. Otherwise, marginal VFR becomes VFR from the Brooks Range into the interior. Still have a zone of some marginal stuff here from 40-mile country back up across the White Mountains, VFR Seward Peninsula, except for Norton Sound. Much of Norton Sound will be marginal. And now IFR, southern part of, or just barely catching St. Lawrence Island all the way down along the southwest coast, and also on the Pacific side of the Aleutian Range, east side of the Alaska Range, and a pretty good zone up along the North Gulf Coast into Prince William Sound on over into the northern Panhandle. And then for the afternoon, that pretty much stays in place here. Marginal VFR over the extreme south, IFR central and northern areas, North Gulf Coast, IFR still lingering, actually increasing here and pushing up to the central south side of the Alaska Range, down now engulfing Kodiak Island. So have this zone here over the mountains and the northern Bering Sea kind of poking into the Yukon Delta, and still that zone up there right along and off the coast, probably be close enough to produce some IFR at times right along the coastal areas, marginal on down to the south. Passes shaping up like this, marginal VFR again for Anatuvik and Adigan. Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR, possible IFR in both eastern entrances. Rainy though, I think it'll just be marginal at times with the lowest conditions on the eastern entrance, VFR off to the west. And for windy, north side or through the pass itself, VFR, but could be possibly marginal VFR on the southern entrance. A lot more likely though on Tuesday. And for Isabel, VFR, otherwise possible marginal conditions, both Isabel and Mentast will be on that southern entrance. And for Tanita, VFR with marginal VFR on the east side, Portage, IFR on the eastern entrance, otherwise marginal, and Chilcoot White, IFR. Freezing levels, 2,000 feet right here over the Alaska Peninsula, otherwise really retreated back down to central Aleutians, and then down here across the Queen Charlotte. So moving on to the icing threats, we've got some icing threats here with the moisture coming up. Prince William Sound, Kenai Peninsula, about turning an arm roughly, southeastward across the Panhandle and not so much down south. Could be some considerable moderate rime icing here coming into the Fox Islands, and just a chance up there over the northeast Bering Sea. Jet stream tomorrow, low pressure here over the southwest interior. It's about 18,000 feet, high pressure aloft up in that area, so we got a 45 to 60 knot northeast wind in that zone there. Otherwise, you got 100 knots nudging up to the central Aleutians, and here at 3,000 or 9,000 feet northwest, this next storm coming in, northwesterlies, 35 to 45 knots or more, 50 knots up across the Alaska Peninsula, 35 to 40 from the southeast into the Gulf of Alaska, carrying right on up 50 knots there across the Seward Peninsula. And at 3,000 feet, about 45 knots there over the peninsula, 35 knots with this system here, as high as 40 though over the southern western Alaska Range, 25 to 30 knot winds up to the North Gulf Coast, lighter over the Panhandle, northwest 50 out there, result in some moderate turbulence across much of the Aleutians and the Alaska Peninsula.
There's a big investment here. Between the ship and its cargo, we're talking millions of dollars. Ensuring that it all arrives safely at the next port is a heavy responsibility for the captain and crew. Once clear of inshore waters, there's not much between the ship and its destination, except weather. And it's weather that makes ocean shipping a dangerous business.
61.0 west at 12/1500.
What's got me is just the speed, how fast it's going. It's going real fast, and they usually don't build up.
No, then you're going to dissipate somewhere along the
Yeah,
line.
see, because it says here even 3 days later, it's still only going to be at 80 knots.
The only thing you can do is
You just keep going the way we're going.
Even with the latest electronic equipment, anticipating changing ocean conditions remains a challenge. Weather is estimated to be responsible for 80% of all losses at sea. So, for the mariner, timely and reliable weather information is crucial.
Despite the technological advances made in marine forecasting, there remain only 3 basic sources of data for the marine forecaster. 1 are buoys, 2 are the satellites, and 3 are the ships at sea. And when the clouds roll in, obscuring the satellite's vision, and you move offshore out of the buoy's range, there remains only the ship reports to provide the cornerstone for the forecasting process.
The only effective way to obtain real-time local marine weather information is by reports from ships at sea. And that's the job of the Voluntary Observing Ship Program.
De winden gehad en als wij dus door eren heen gaan, worden de winden noordoost.
The providers and users are found aboard ships operating on all the world's oceans.
The VOS program is a surface data acquisition program under guidelines established by the World Meteorological Organization. It's the largest observing program in the world with 1,600 observing platforms maintained by the U.S. on board moving ships, 7,300 ships worldwide operating in the program.
Weather data from ships is collected and analyzed at the National Weather Service's National Center for Environmental Prediction. Forecasters use ship data to develop the high seas forecast. Sometimes it's the only data available.
This guy right here averages about 3 high, so it looks like he's a 28, but he's actually like a 25.
The National Weather Service VOS program generates just under 400,000 ship reports annually. Worldwide, all VOS programs together produce about 1.3 million ship reports annually.
In the United States, the VOS system is coordinated by port meteorological officers.
Hey, Jim, how you doing? Pretty good, how are you? Long time no see. Yeah, it has been a while.
Officers like Jim Saunders recruit and train marine weather observers.
Yeah, we're just talking about the tropical storm barrier coming up here.
They maintain the equipment and are continually seeking ships and volunteers. The VOS program operates at no cost to the vessel. Communications charges, observing instruments, and reporting supplies are furnished by NOAA's National Weather Service.
There's no adjustment needed, so terrific, good shape.
Bound from New York to San Juan, Puerto Rico, the Sealand Consumer is a typical ship participating in the VOS program. Its crew knows the value of an accurate high seas forecast.
Well, I'm the chief mate on this ship, and I've been going to sea for approximate 40 years. You know, you're out here at sea, and you want to know what's going on, because your life and the safety of everybody depends on it, like the cargo, of course, and the whole ship. If you don't know what the weather is doing like this, you might be in a heap of trouble, especially nowadays, where everything is bound by time. We are like a railroad, everything is on time, so it's important to know what the weather's like.
Reliable observations are key. Good data from ships means good forecasts in return. So accuracy and attention to detail are critical.
There's 2 important things when you submit shipboard meteorological data. One is accuracy and the other is timeliness. If you put in bad data, you're going to get a bad forecast out. If you trust somebody else who's put in data immediately prior to yours because you don't want to go out and under the bridge wing and observe the swell or the sea state yourself, then you're trusting in that person. And that isn't the real data that's happening right now. Timeliness is extremely important in submitting your data. If it's late or you've saved it for the next report and putting two reports into the same time, then your synoptic value is totally lost. The idea is to get your report in as close to the synoptic hour as possible.
Weather data is normally transmitted to the National Weather Service 4 times daily, corresponding to most weather prediction model runs.
These reports are submitted in Zulu time or Greenwich time or Universal Time Coordinator, whichever term you want to use, but they're submitted at these synoptic hours every 6 hours all around the world the same time, so that when Klaus Mueller is taking an observation in Germany on board his ship at 0600 Zulu, John Thompson in the Pacific is also taking it at 0600 Zulu, and those times are exactly the same. So no matter where you are in the world, the synoptic time will remain the same, and the data taking time is exactly the same for everyone.
I was born in the rural South in the sharecropper's home. We had all kind of animals around. I had coons for pets, I had goats for pets. So I'm used to being around a farm as an early child, so I like to have animals around. In fact, I never saw snow till I was 18. I think being an Alaskan is the willingness to be unique and do your own thing. People are surprised when they realize that Star lives in downtown Anchorage. When I take Star for walks, she goes along with me just like a dog. I take her almost any place downtown in the stores. We take her down to the wine store if I want to go down there, to the photo shop. Any place I'm going downtown, she'll go along with me. But I guess it is kind of a surprise to have a tourist walk through town, or even local, and there's a reindeer on the sidewalk, just looking at her.
Reindeer, she's well known.
Yeah, wonderful.
Have a good day, folks.
When people leave after being introduced to Star, I hope they appreciate that Star is a unique animal that is a tribute to Ivan and Nora Stewart, who started the tradition. They came to town in '42, started the photo shop in '42, and they were always unique people and always had the interesting approach in life, which I think is what reindeer living downtown Anchorage is about. Why do I do this? When Ora passed away in '02, I thought it would be nice to carry on her tradition. In 1950, Ora had mentioned to Ivan that she wanted a pet, and he assumed she wanted an Alaskan pet, like a dog, but she had her heart set on something very unique. She wanted a reindeer. This is a photograph of the very first, one of the early reindeers. I think it might have been the first one in 1950. And Ora called this one Snowball because she's white. Most reindeer are not white because, for one reason, in a herd, they will reject the reindeer because they're so easily spotted.
Hi, Star! Oh, hi, sweet. Hi, beautiful.
After Star 1 passed away, Ora got another star that we call Star 2. Up until that time period, which was, I believe, was '83, they never locked their enclosures. The gates were open, the top was open. So people that knew the Stewarts or knew them could come in and visit the reindeer, and it was kind of like an open pet. Well, they went out of town one weekend. She was fed, taken care of, and the reindeer disappeared. The individual who stole her, there were 3 of them, was apprehended. He went to jail, spent time. So after that time point, Star was protected by locked gates. The gates were always chained and locked. Then Star 3 had an unfortunate accident with plastic bags, which may have blown in her enclosure. So now you have Star with a locked gate, with a roof, with a double fence, so you can't shove things inside the fence other than small things. I've had experiences here at this location myself personally, where we had an attempted break-in a couple years ago. So there's been unfortunate incidents, but we try to protect her. I don't know why people would steal her and kill her and put her in a freezer. I just cannot comprehend that. My star is somewhat different than the star the Stewarts had. The one I have is what we call star number 6. She is an Alaskan-born Canadian reindeer that was born out at the reindeer farm. Obviously, as long as I have control over her, she'll never be used for reindeer sausage or anything like that. She's not raised for food, she's raised for pet. The most rewarding part of taking care of Star is meeting the people that I have an opportunity to meet that I wouldn't otherwise. If I just walk downtown as a stranger, people walk by you unless you know them and you're just another individual on the street. You go walking downtown with a reindeer, first thing you know, you're surrounded by people. You're just amazing how many people I meet. Last week, Star's photograph went around the world. I mean, she was appearing in BBC, MSN, in the Persian Gulf. So she's an international celebrity, and it's kind of nice to be able to be a part of that.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
There are many ways